And so our next session, we have Lusen Mendel, Director of Developer Relations at Karat, and Rohit Grover, Senior Interview Engineer and Mentor at Karat. Between the entire organization of Karat, they've done over 100,000 technical interviews. And for as an organization, the reason why we partner with Karat is because they've been our go-to knowledge source for all things technical interview and fair and unbiased assessment. So we're really excited to hang out with Lusen and with Rohit to share their experience and knowledge with you in this way. So some quick context and background on both of them. Lusen shares interviewer best practices with interviewers from around the world, doing it everywhere. And they helped build Karat's interview engineer organization, previously managed engineering teams at Indiegogo and Rackspace. Rohit is in the thick of it, conducting technical interviews on a daily basis, and is here to share his unique insights related to the topic. So Lusen, Rohit, welcome. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Lovely to be here.
And Rohit, you might want to give a little more context about what you do with Karat and as a senior engineer at another company.
Well, I interview candidates, and I love this participation that I get from them. And I'm simply a facilitator, and I let them be and show themselves in the best light. And yeah, I just enable that.
Yep. Awesome. And you're also a software engineer. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So hi, everyone. Here's what we'd like to do. I'm also a software engineer, but now I do a lot of talks and workshops on interviewing best practices. I haven't written code in many, many years. Well, that's not quite true. We're always sort of writing code in the background, aren't we? But here's what we'd like to do, Rohit and I. We're going to demonstrate some interview interactions. And what we'd like all of you to do is to put on your observation hats and let us know what we're doing wrong. I'm going to do the first, I'll be the interviewer for our first little role play because we don't have time to untrain all of Rohit's niceness. So we'll start with an easy one. So let's do that. And we have a few different demos to go through, but also if any of you have specific situations or scenarios that you find tricky or you just want to see us maybe role play a good interaction, feel free to put that in the chat. All right. Cool. So Rohit will be the candidate. I'll role play the interviewer, and action. Okay. Yeah, like I said, we'll start with an easy problem. What I'd like you to do is to just write some code that takes a list of numbers as input and returns it without duplicates.
Okay. Can I talk through my thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, what I'd like to do is to go through all the elements. Maybe a loop, a for loop, nested loop.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Nested for loop, what's the time complexity for that?
I'm sorry, I'm a bit rusty about time complexities.
I thought you had a computer science degree. You know what? It's okay. Just go do what you were planning to do.
Is there a better way to do it?
No, it's fine. Go ahead with what you were planning.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna freeze frame, and Rohit's gonna implement a solution with nested for loops. We're not gonna actually code that up right now, and we're gonna pick back up as Rohit finishes typing the last character for his code to work.
Okay. Okay. It looks like it's working.
That looks like it's returning a list of the duplicates, and that's not what I asked for.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, I wanted a function that took a list and removed the duplicates and returned all the unique elements. You're returning the duplicates.
Okay. Can I modify this?
I'm sorry, we're actually out of time. And cut. Now I know there's a little bit of a delay, so we can't hear your applause just yet. But let us know. I mean, how'd I do? As the interviewer, what did I do wrong? And I'm hamming it up for the applause. But it is very easy for interviewers who are nervous or inexperienced or maybe distracted by other things that are going on. They're just coming to this meeting and their head's not in the game. It's easy for us to unintentionally do things without realizing sometimes if we're not really calling out what we should be doing. So what should I have done instead, or what did I do wrong? And maybe while y'all are typing things into the chat, Rohit, what was this experience like for you as a candidate?
Well, I felt challenged in a way that was too personal, and I felt that I had to do something which I couldn't, and instead of focusing on what I could do, I was being. I felt like you wanted something that I couldn't give you, and so I was discouraged from doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and also it's particularly dismissive and probably alarming to the candidate when you say, well, you're trying to engage with how to do something better, and I'm just like cutting it off, like, nah, just do whatever you said before. I mean, what a missed opportunity as an interviewer to be like, well, maybe if I explain this a little bit, what complexity is, and then see the candidate apply that or have some good insights, like that's actually a nice opportunity that I could have taken advantage of. And instead, now he just feels like he's failing, and it's, that was, yeah. Let's see. Distracted at the start, yes. Pretty dismissive up front, thought you had a CS degree. Yep, ouch. Let's see. That felt like a microaggression. Guide them up front and help them to make the most of the time. Yeah, I mean, this is the worst part of the interview, is that we spend all this time, and then at the end, Rohit gives the right answer to the wrong question, which wastes both of our time. Like, I have one job as the interviewer. My one job at the end of this very limited time is to have a yes/no decision. Do I think Rohit should move forward, or the candidate should move forward? And like, I didn't even accomplish my own goal. So time management is really, really important. Rohit, do you want to say more about this? Because I know there's some things at Karat that y'all do to really manage the time well.
Yeah. So at Karat, when I interview, I try to make the problem statement as clear as possible, as early as possible. So, and I let the candidate show what they can, and it's more important as to what they can achieve. And in many engineering scenarios, it's okay to get an acceptable solution and then improve upon it iteratively. So that's completely fine. One doesn't have to point out that something better can be done right at the beginning. So yeah, let the other person be and show what they are able to do.
Yeah. And in particular, so one of the things we talk about at Karat is that everything you say and do as an interviewer, maybe this is a simplification, but I like to say it falls into 3 categories. You're either clarifying the question or what the candidate is supposed to do. Like, as interviewers, we're guides, we're hosting this whole conversation. So we're either clarifying it, or we're providing encouragement, like being a nice host, or we're giving guidance or some kind of hint that's specific to skill assessments usually, right? And I like to break up, it's important to pay attention to each of those 3 different things. Like, encouragement is free in a sense. That's just like just helping someone feel at ease, versus guidance might be when we get into that situation where, okay, the signal has dropped, the candidate gets stuck. And there's lots of different things we can do. You don't have to give guidance. You can ask a different question. You can remove a constraint. There's different things. But if you are going to start giving help, sometimes that impacts the assessment, right? So separating out, saying something, not, just because you're not giving guidance doesn't mean you have to be silent. But that clarification step, that first one of being clear to the candidate, I think that's the most crucial up front. The candidates are so vulnerable at the beginning and end of the interview. And the beginning is when they're getting all this new context and they're on into the swing of it. And that's the time to make sure you're removing noise, because if the candidate is answering the wrong question, it really just is a waste of a very limited amount of time. Yeah. Okay, should we try? Is there more we want to say about this? Let's see. Yes, Cynthia, I like that you said that when the candidate doesn't feel at ease, it's hard to assess them properly. Rohit, is there anything you do in particular to set candidates at ease when you can tell they're having a hard time?
I acknowledge what they have achieved already, and it's more important that they feel comfortable about themselves, about their person. So yeah, I just turn towards them and acknowledge what they have offered, and yeah, things just fall into place.
Okay, cool. Well, let's try this again. Why don't you be the interviewer? Now that we've gone over some of these good tips, I'll be the candidate. And action.
Hi, hi. How are you doing? It's really lovely to meet you.
It's nice meeting you too.
So today we're going to do a programming task, and what I'd like you to do is to write a function, and we'd like this function to take a list of values. So let's say we've got a list, let's say 2, 3, 2, in that sequence. And this function needs to take this input and remove all the duplicates. So in this case, with this particular input, the function would return 2 and 3 because those are the unique elements after removing all the duplicates. Is that clear?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so what I'd like you to do is to take some time to think of an approach, and then once you have an idea, please discuss it with me.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, I'd like to think about this for a little bit. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, so I think what I'll do is I'll loop through the input, and I'll create a hash map. So as I loop through the input, I'll put the values as keys in the hash map, and then as the values, I'll count how many times I've seen that key, that input before. So I'm not really sure how I can use that though to then return a new list. I think I'm missing something.
So remember that you need to start with a list and return another list, which has the same elements, but only the unique elements, which means the duplicates need to be removed.
Yeah, no, I got that. Yeah, I'm just not certain how I can. It's been a while since I've used hash maps. I'm just not certain how I can use this, to do the next step. I just can't figure out what that next step would be in this approach.
I see. Well, I can't really tell you that. We've got so many candidates, and I don't want to put you at an advantage by telling you what the next step would be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I understand. That makes sense. I'm not sure what to do next.
All right. So you've talked about building this hash map, and you'll have counts associated with each value. So what we want you to do is to return a list that's similar to the original, but with the duplicates removed.
Yeah, I got that. Okay, I'm gonna cut before I get too exasperated. So this is an interesting situation, right? Like Rohit was being very nice. It was a very friendly interaction. Sometimes candidates get stuck. What could Rohit or what could an interviewer do in this situation? And I guess since I know there's a bit of a delay, let me just say on this, one thing that was really nice was that Rohit gave an example of the question. That's that part of being clear and really trying to reduce that noise of misunderstanding. And sometimes if it is, these are toy questions a little bit. If it is a more complicated situation, actually having the interviewer making sure to ask the candidate, okay, here's some input. So the interviewer explains one example case, this input, this output, and then ask the candidate, hey, you tell me, why does this input get to this second output? Just to verify, because sometimes candidates, they're nervous, they're just saying yes, you're just trying to engage them, and that verifies for both of you that you're on the same page. And I know when I do workshops with hiring managers and interviewers, and I always ask, what are you looking for in your candidates? What are some of the competencies and skills? How do you assess them? And pretty much always there's at least one person, sometimes everyone, who's saying, well, I want my candidates to be able to handle ambiguity, or I want them to ask me questions or explain their thoughts unprompted, or ask questions unprompted, or write tests. There's sort of almost like looking for the things that the candidates do themselves, as if they tell a candidate to do something, that's cheating. And I want to draw a very important distinction here, which is that the absence of behavior does not let you assess that. So if you want to assess someone's test writing and they don't write tests, it doesn't mean they can't write tests. It just means in this interaction, they didn't think that was the right thing to do. And candidates get all sorts of weird advice. There's interviews that are about getting to the right answer as quickly as possible. There's interviews where it's about the conversation or the code design. And so ideally, you're telling your candidates up front really what the objectives are, because you don't want your candidate to make a decision that biases, that creates noise. Because candidates, you want to be the one making the decision, right? You want to control that. So don't put your candidates in positions where they are unintentionally making noisy decisions. So telling objectives is one thing, but even I'm just going to give this tip right out here, to specifically ask candidates what you want them to do. If they've written some code, if testing is on your rubric or part of how you're going to evaluate that yes/no decision, tell the candidate, okay, now I'd like you to come up with a test suite. Just tell me, what are some of the things you would test to build confidence in this code, or that you would put into a refactoring or whatever. Then you can get the signal of how well they do. How well do they write tests? If you want to evaluate ambiguity, how well someone handles ambiguity, tell the candidate something up front a little bit, like I'm going to give you a vague question, and you're going to need to ask questions, and we're going to need to have a conversation to figure out exactly what you're doing. And then see how they handle that. Rohit, what do you think?
Yes. So it's important to identify what they are being asked, and as you said, that's the signal. So I clarify as many times as needed what is being asked, and in a way that's friendly, that appears to be confirming, and it's like an affirmation. Yes, this is what we need to do. Yes, I understand. Yes, this is what we need to do, and then they can demonstrate what they're able to perform in that situation. And yeah, just being that presence of support, protection, and just presence with the right amount of information at the right time. That is what helps me get more out of my candidates.
Yeah. So there's, I would say, two big pillars of introducing noise in a negative way, or not seeing the signal. And so one of them is basically candidates answering the wrong question or getting off track, and so thinking a lot about that how you ask questions and how you clarify is really important. There's another thing that happened in this interview, which is that the candidate got stuck and we wasted time. Like, I was just, sort of a toy situation, but it happens, right? That candidates, they don't know something or they get stuck. And like I said earlier, there's different ways you can handle that. Sometimes it's like, this candidate is having trouble with this data structure. Let's just try a different problem. And part of this is like, I used to do a lot of engineering interviews. I could ace 5 interviews in a row for coding interviews, and then like bomb on the 6th one. And is my ability as an engineer the average of all of those, or is it, it's usually not, right? Like, the competencies don't really often work that way. So typically you're trying to find the candidate's best performance, especially for a skill assessment. Right? Skill assessments are a reaction to the more conversational interviews where you could like confidently explain someone else's, architecture, or you're sort of explaining some other work or future work, and you can confident your way into a positive decision to move forward from the interviewer that maybe where you're not actually a good fit. Skill assessments, you can't usually confident your way into like knowing an algorithm you don't know. Confidence still helps always, but but you can have this, like, the false negatives become the danger, right? Of bad performance and getting nervous, or even just simply like bad time management. So with the hints, so in this case, in this demo, there are things like, Rohit, what would you have done if this was a real interview? This was a real question. I was getting stuck. Like, what are some of the, like, how do you know what are the guideposts for knowing, like, how to go about giving hints for like an organization that doesn't have anything written down to interviewers, and interviewers are just like each doing their own thing.
So in this case, your solution did have some merit, and if I could see a way to help you complete your solution, I would have nudged you gently towards it without actually giving you the answer. And otherwise, I would reiterate the part of the question that really mattered, which may have been the point where you strayed away, and bring the focus back onto that point where at least we had some alignment between the approach and the problem. So either reinforce the point of departure, or encourage the part in the candidate's solution that could still lead to a full answer. So
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want to hurt their dignity by giving them the answer, because well, maybe yeah, that's not fair to them or to the signal. But yeah, just coming back to the most useful point that we had achieved without actually calling it a hint, just reinforcing that.
Yeah. Well, how do you? Here's what you kind of hit on this. And we have one more little, like, we left our smallest one for last. Hey, you know what? Let's do this, and then I'll ask this question, because I really
Sure.
want to hit at the devil's always in the details here. Like, how do you know when someone is stuck? How do you know when you're doing? There's different ways to do harm. You can do harm through inaction or overaction, right? Like a lot of these, everything. I'm always wearing my engineering hat. And it's like always about balance and trade-offs, right? And you're always trying to find the sweet spot with all of these points: encouragement, clarity, giving guidance. You're always trying to kind of read the room with the candidate. So maybe we'll do one more demo, and then I think that's an interesting question to answer of, some of the more tricky cases. And I have one tip I want to make sure I get in before this is over. Okay, let's do this third one. How about I will be the interviewer, Rohit, you'll be the candidate. Okay, action. All right, Rohit, you've been doing great so far. For this last bit, what we're going to do is a coding exercise. What I'd like you to do is to write a function that takes in a list of numbers and returns that same list, but with all the duplicates removed from the original list. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. Quick question. Does order matter in the return list?
Oh, order. Yeah, you could sort it. Like, either way is fine.
Okay. That sounds good. I'll start by sorting it. Then why don't I loop through every value in the sorted array, and then for every element, I'll compare it to its adjacent value.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you'll be doing like that sort of thing. And then when you get to the end, that's going to be like, you'll probably have a little edge case there, right? Go off the +1 boundary.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'll definitely handle that.
Yeah. Cool. All right, cut. An overly friendly interviewer. This was just to sort of highlight the difficulty that can happen the inconsistency that can happen when you're scaling an interview program, about how, your interviewers are juggling all these things. They're trying to connect with people. They're trying to be encouraging. They're trying to figure out what is noise, what is signal, what do I let the candidate do, when do I step in, but what, and so in this case, it kind of, right, I felt like I mentioned sorting, I mentioned some edge cases, and at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answer. Like, different companies and roles might require different things, but they should be probably, I would just say, write things down. Like, write down on your question guides what is considered this, the signal part of the question, and if there's any noise. Like, maybe if some questions require string manipulation, but that's just because of handling input, and that's not as important as some of the like algorithmic components or whatever the competencies are, maybe on a rubric that are also written down. Tell the interviewer, if the candidate doesn't know this, like, give them the answer, tell them to look up docs, give them the split function. Like, don't spend 10 minutes on the unimportant thing. So tell them what is noise. And the same, that telling interviewers so they know what noise and signal is, gets really important with the hints, so that they know, even, on specific question, if you don't have any documentation for interviewers, just, write some bullet points and have something general about like technical interviews in general. But eventually it can be really helpful on specific questions to say, here's the common mistakes, and here's how you could ramp, for each, maybe there's different approaches. Here's how you can ramp them up in different ways. That just enables interviewers to succeed when probably your interviewers are actually engineers. Like, this isn't even their jobs. Like, they're coming to the meeting, like, you're coming to the interview. And if they have a guide that tells them there's different approaches, then they're just going to be so much better at interacting with candidates. I mean, hopefully they've read that guide previously, but even in that moment, they're not going to like shuffle candidates, to one solution. So they'll know different ones. They'll know, here's the progression of questions, and even here's how that impacts the assessment, maybe. So writing things down can be really, I think, really powerful for consistency. Rohit, you'll probably agree with me on this. Handholding is one of the, or guidance hints is one of the most difficult things to get consistent. Like, even at Karat, we spend a ton of time doing even practice interviews to see that an interviewer against this kind of role play that Rohit and I are doing, we'll do that in a more real like interview setting. And you can imagine doing that where the candidate is trying to have certain, maybe they're competent, but they've never done this interview before. They're making assumptions. Does the interviewer detect that as noise, or does that influence the signal? Or they don't know certain competencies. Is that coming up? Are the rubrics looking the same? So you can kind of see how you, if you really want to invest time in this, you can really have like a close the loop. But writing things down, even a few bullet points, that's always helpful. Yes. Yep. Okay, I'll see please do ask any questions that y'all have for us. Oh, here's one. Any interesting cases or situations you experience? Oh, sorry, that's from, I was thinking that's a good one for Rohit. Like any particular, what's the hardest candidate? What's like one example of a difficult interview to get a good signal out of, and like what's a trick for that?
So in some cases, candidates have a particular approach that they are fixed on. So they just want to force themselves through that approach. Maybe they've seen a similar problem, they've seen a similar solution, and they just want to apply that at all costs. And so it's difficult to make someone realize that they have perhaps too much fixation on a particular thing without giving up too much of the information. So I stay with them and remind them what the main task is. But if they have not been able to understand that, all I can do is to reiterate the task. And the next step for me would be to actually point out that they have an error. So the best I can do is ask them to explain how their solution would work with a particular example. But if they even don't get it even then it becomes difficult for me to get out of the situation without giving away the whole solution. So some people are fixated.
That's interesting. And again, you can't look at, if I had to, you could imagine a candidate performance. We record all of our interviews, for internal trainings and to share with the hiring managers and recruiters that we're doing these interviews for. And you can imagine two interviewers with, just out in the world without any conversation between them, look at that same performance, come to two different conclusions. Oh, this was a great conversation. They nearly finished. Like, yay, let's hire them. And someone else was like, whoa, they didn't get it done. We're results oriented. They didn't write tests. We shouldn't hire them. They wasted time talking. And who knows what the right answer is? But they're inconsistent, right? Those two interviewers saw the same performance, came to different conclusions. So there's a lot of nuance here. Like even in that situation, Rohit, you were giving about, someone's fixated, is the competency brainstorming, is the competency writing code, and trying to make even more specific questions so that your interviewers can really partner with the candidate so that everyone is in the clear, like that clarity point again, and knows exactly what we're trying to do. Is it, you could even imagine a question where you give an algorithm and see them write code. You ask a bunch of questions for them to give approaches to, and then you choose one that they understand to implement code, rather than sometimes we give these really big questions and we intermix all these competencies, and it kind of shows up in the rubrics in difficult ways. So there's no right or wrong answers. You kind of have to figure out what works for you, write it down so that everyone's on the same page. It kind of got away from candidate experience, but I think all of this, you work backwards, so that then it's very clear what the interaction needs to be for everyone to succeed. And you're never going to get your candidates. This is a funny customer service situation because most candidates aren't going to get the thing they want. But if you can help them feel respected and good about the experience, even when they don't move forward, I think that's what a great achievement, and that's what we should be striving for. Well, thanks. I know we went to time.
That was an incredible conversation. Thank you both so much. Really quickly, do you have any final thoughts you want to share? Any closing statements you want to make on the world of interviewing and effective communication for the community?
I'd say trust in the candidate, trust in this whole process where people can engage and come together. I would say trust.
Yeah, that's been echoed, I think, a few times in the sessions here, but that's a really big one. Thank you.
Wonderful. Great words to end on. Thank you both so much, and we'll see you next time.